So I was invited by my followers on Instagram to watch the Sam Vaknin video called "Is Depression Healthy?" I had a question through saying, if depression is healthy, then X, Y, Z. And I was like, why would you say depression is healthy? That's like saying illness is health. What are you talking about? And I didn't know about the Sam Vaknin video. And they said, no, it's in relation to that. And I was like, oh, okay, I better go and watch it then. So I did. I just watched it now. Really, really liked it. Highly recommend it. It's the one from this year, May 2021. Sam Vaknin, Is Depression Healthy? And I won't go over all the points that he made in the video, but there's two really important points that we need to look at when we're asking questions pertinent to psychology that Sam raised. There's two concepts that lead psychology along a path that is dangerously close to charlatanism. One is the focus on the individual, and the second is the focus on dysfunction. Sam explains in the video. I won't get too much into the dysfunction part of it here, but I am going to talk about individualism in this video. A little bit of a warning, like I typically in psychology, there's almost like a left-wing, right-wing bias, and I'm left of centre on most things, which means you're on the nurture side of debate rather than the nature side of debate. I don't think it's particularly useful to put rats in T-shaped mazes and see where they go. I'm not a behaviouralist. I don't think that that's a particularly useful thing to learn how to help humans to live their lives and put their socks on every day. And so, yeah, you'll find me hanging out where the CBT is, the psychoanalysis is, talk therapy, and the language of the unconscious and symbology and that kind of a thing. And so I tend to be like a bit of a lefty psychologist. So we are nurture, where that means that we believe the environment creates personalities. A stereotypically, but not always, more right-leaning view is nature. You're born with your attributes. It's biological essentialism. So if you're born extroverted, it's because you have an extroverted gene. If you're born with a tendency towards depression, it's because you have a depressive gene. So generally I am left and I am towards nurture. What I'm going to say is much more, is one of the few areas where I am actually a bit of a biological essentialist. And I think a more of a right-leaning view is the appropriate one. And worse yet, comrades, he said ironically, it's a bit bleak. So if you are feeling depressed right now and vulnerable, this might not be the video for you. If you're feeling depressed right now and vulnerable, don't try and resolve that through watching videos online. See a qualified therapist and try and see them face to face. If you can't, see them on Zoom and see them at the nearest possibility. So, is depression healthy? What is depression? This is where the beginning of my biological essentialism steps in. Of all mental health issues, I am very much of the opinion that the majority of what we're looking at is either complex post-traumatic stress disorder from singular or multiple traumas in people's lives. I think it's so obvious, so traceable, in my humble opinion, it's almost hard to deny. There are also cultural factors. We live in a sick culture, and as Sam Vaknin said in his video, if you're not depressed in this culture, then there are questions we need to ask. I mean, this is a depressing environment. This is a depressing moment in human history. So typically I would say most mental health issues, name them, like social anxiety disorder, possibly even introversion and extroversion as personality tendencies. Many of our personality traits, they're actually trauma informed. They're actually crafted by trauma. But with depression, would say this one is there's only two things that I consider to be more in the realm of biology than in the realm of trauma and psychology. One is depression, and the other is extreme psychosis. Not where people are vaguely getting some hallucinations for some period of time, but where they're getting extremely strong hallucinations that they're really struggling to distinguish between fantasy and reality for prolonged periods of time. We know that sometimes people end up there in extreme psychosis because of drug misuse, sometimes because of using prescription drugs that they were prescribed by a doctor, and sometimes because they've come off those drugs. There are antidepressants that can do that to you. Adderall can do that to you. A drug that I tried recently once, which I later found out was the drug that sent Jordan Peterson completely off the rails, called lorazepam. I took half of one of those and it ruined my life for 3 days. He was on a high dosage for a year. God knows how he's made his way back. So some of them are drug induced. Depression's the other one that I see as being more biological and more in the body than in the history, let's say, in the past, in trauma, something that's a learned response. So that's the biological essentialist part of it. Here's to the more bleak part of this, and it relates to what Sam said about individualism. When we say something is healthy and or adaptive, we have to define in accordance with what objective. What's the goal? So our culture, and psychology as part of our culture, is infused with the notion of individualism, which means that if you have a problem, generally speaking, the problem is in you. That's why if you show up with depression or you show up with anxiety, we put the pills in your mouth, not in your prime minister's mouth, not in your family's mouths, not in the mouths of your whole village, in your mouth. You, singular mouth, in your face, for your brain, because you're wrong. And when we flourish in life, it is assumed that we flourish as individuals. So that which is healthy is that which serves the individual. How should a person live? I don't know, looking like a fucking IKEA catalogue, I suppose. Married, kids, couple of cars, a dog, and a nice house. That's you as an individual. That's you winning. That's the individual winning. And this is where I want to say something that's bleak, and I'm going to give you a second warning. It's on you. You're an adult. If you can't listen to this because you're feeling low and depressed, don't try and resolve issues like depression through YouTube videos or Odyssey videos or anywhere else. Go and see a professional. It's the last warning. Got it? Individualism, in the sense that if something is healthy, it is good for you, is a very modern idea. Possibly 150 years old, maybe even a little bit less, but certainly not more than 150 years old. I don't think it would be easy to trace it. Okay, 170. I don't think you'll trace it back much further than 1850. The idea, the intrinsic assumption that which is healthy for the individual. Some things that are healthy for your tribe and not healthy for the individual. So, as Sam rightly said, depression could be seen to be healthy if an animal is wounded, they become lower energy and they go off on their own and they self-isolate and they heal. That's true. And the purpose of that is so they can come back stronger. However, when some animals are injured and they go off and they self-isolate, they die. Many die. In the jungle, if let's say a lion has been in a fight to see who's the biggest lion and he gets a good serious injury and he goes off on his own to recover, one potential outcome of that is death. What's healthy? What's adaptive? Well, what's healthy and adaptive for a tribe of 20 humans who are living hand to mouth in a hunter-gatherer environment that is what we are evolved for, because all this arable farming hasn't had a single dent on our genetic evolution yet. It just hasn't been happening for long enough. Certainly modern tech it's not even fucking close. So we are hunter-gatherers living in offices using smartphones. We're used to very low resource environments where there's 1,000,001 ways you can die very, very quickly. And given that context, things like anxiety, hypervigilance, catastrophizing, as Sam said, is perfectly natural. Even psychopathy and narcissism. If you're in the middle of a genocide, if you're in the middle of a terrible weather system and people are dying left, right, and centre, it's not really that useful that your empathy levels are high and you're going to weep solidly for 3 weeks over every single member of your tribe that's died, all 20 of them. You'll die of starvation. So you would probably adapt to be a little bit callous, and you probably adapt to be a little bit self-centered in harsh environments. Who's to say that depression isn't also, and this is the worst thing I'm going to say in this video, isn't an invitation to death? Who's to say depression isn't an evolutionary function that's not for your benefit? It's for the benefit of the tribe. If you're wounded, whether you're a human or a lion, you ain't hunting, you ain't gathering, you aren't having sex, you're not procreating, you're not looking after the kids. We have an imperative. We have one job today and all the days that follow today. Don't fucking die. Don't fucking die. You can be ill. You can be wounded, but you can't be ill forever and you can't be wounded forever. People will say, yes, but we've adapted to look after our sick and we've adapted to be kind. Yeah, sometimes, somewhere, in some places. But you can't say that all of the beauty of human history looked like that. That's just not true, because you need a degree of wealth. You need a discretionary amount of food and a discretionary amount of human labor to be able to afford to literally or figuratively carry an old man or an old lady who you only carry around now because she tells great stories and reads your palm and talks to the stars. That's the beginning of wealth. When you as a little tribe of 20 to 100 people can afford to keep the sick, it's healthy. I'm for it. I got a lot of shit recently for saying I'm for the welfare state, and I'm like, well, what else are we going to do? Just let the weak die? That's not a sign of a civilized society. However, that welfare state that I like so much, if we were in the middle of a war and like 90% of the population got wiped out, I ain't trying to do welfare state. I'm not giving you my food. I'm not going to die so that somebody who's definitely going to die on their own eats for 3 more days. That doesn't make sense. So sometimes I think if we're going to talk health and positive adaptation and negative adaptation, we need to consider the health of the tribe is not the health of the individual. There is literature out there written by psychologists who either work in reservations or psychologists who are First Nations peoples, which is the more politically correct way of saying Native American, First Nations peoples, around the ideas of suicide, which you can go and look up. Not everybody in the world believes that suicide is the worst thing imaginable. You've got Native American culture, not all tribes, not everywhere in the United States, but in some tribes, it wasn't considered a social taboo to kill yourself. That's a modern Western, it's a very Christian idea. We save everyone. Nobody dies. No, sometimes people will just walk off and take a long walk until they find a river and go and take a swim in it, because they know that the food's running out. And they know that they're not out hunting. They know that they're not contributing. You can look this up for yourself. Similarly, you'd have cultures like the samurai culture, where suicide absolutely isn't considered taboo. If you have committed a crime or a sin that taints the health, it's higher level and it's more intellectual and more cultured. Obviously, it's not survival mode stuff. Well, it is survival mode if you live in that culture, because you die if you fall on the wrong side of the symbology. Then the most honourable thing you could do would be to kill yourself. In samurai culture, peasants weren't allowed to. It was an honour only afforded to it's not really let's just say nobility. They're not nobility, but let's call them nobility in feudal Japan. There's many cases of people asking to be permitted to commit suicide and being told no, because it was, if you had been cowardly and you'd done something wrong and you'd sinned, these are the things that lead to depression, is the point I'm about to lead on to. How do I make it better? You can kill yourself in a ritualistic way that shows how courageous you are, that would wipe your slate clean. In such a guilt and shame infused society, it was considered the most wonderful kindness to be able to say, we will wipe your name clean. You do have to cut yourself across the abdomen right the way up to your sternum to do that. And you'd be like, oh, thank you, because I really thought you weren't going to let me. So is depression a healthy response? I would make, it's not a different point to Sam's, it's an adjacent point to Sam's. From an evolutionary psychology point of view, if we accept that evolutionary psychology has any merit, maybe it does, maybe it doesn't. I would say it's healthy if it takes the weak out of the tribe. The weak? Did you just say the weak? Are you insane? You can't say the weak. I'm not saying the weak. I'm saying evolution is saying the weak. Why would an entity that is in a harsh survival environment, you need energy, you need aggression, you need determination, you need good mapping, you need good communication, you need weapons, you need to be on your game. What does depression do? You throw your weapons down, you stop cleaning your tools, you don't talk to the other members of the tribe, whatever raises you up in the hierarchy, you don't keep the appropriate number of ringlets in your hair or the beads in your ears or whatever the human tribe you're in, you stop doing it. You stop bowing to the gods. You stop whatever the thing is. You stop because you don't give a shit. Yes, that could be evolutionarily healthy if the next steps after that are you go and take a little walk. And maybe depression is like... maybe you could see it as like a pressure test from evolution. Go take a walk, all right? You found a nice tree. Listen, you can stay here, and one way or another, something's going to eat you, or you're going to die, or you go back. But I think it's a moment for the individual on behalf of the health of the tribe, and evolutionarily speaking, people need to be sacrificed. I mean, that's... You could hear those words and you see me, I look so modern, and you're like, you can't say that. But it's true, that's how we lived. I mean, we only watch these TVs and laptops and iPhones because there's men out there somewhere sacrificing themselves in the name of our safety pretty much 24/7. I mean, it's pretty much 24/7. And in any 24-hour period, if you live in the modern liberal democracies of the first world, so-called, there's people out there being sacrificed as we speak. So you can't say that it's barbaric or anachronistic that sacrifice is part of tribal survival. We're still doing it now. We never stopped. It's just that we don't see it. You don't see Ugg walk off, go to the edge of a cliff and dive because he's decided that he hasn't got it in him to keep hunting, and he knows that the winter's bad and there's only so much food and you've got kids and you're going to feel obliged to help him, to feed him, and so he makes a decision. I think depression could be that as well, and we need to think about that. I told you it was a harsh video. What does that mean from the point of view as if you have depression? Okay, I'll come to prescriptive stuff right at the end. There's one more point I want to make, and then we'll talk about prescriptive stuff given everything I've just covered there. This will set people off because it sounds like I'm normalizing the death of the weak or euthanasia or suicide. I think suicide's a bad idea. Euthanasia under certain circumstances is a very humane idea. And we should protect the weak. It's the sign of a civilized society. But don't kid yourselves, kids. It's the sign of a wealthy society. You need discretionary wealth. If you're living on the bones of your arse, you won't. You won't. And it wouldn't take more than 3 months to get all that first world nonsense out of you. A truly cataclysmic, catastrophic event, your whole value system will shift like that. But between some stranger you don't know who's got one leg and your kids and your family, My money's not, unless you have it to share. Unless you have, you're like, no, I got tons of beans back here. I can feed all you guys and the stranger with one leg who can't fend for themselves. That's cool, but you have to have wealth. It's a wealthy person's morality. It's a wealthy, individualism. It's a wealthy tribe's morality. You can only afford to have that morality if there is wealth. When we're talking about depression, I actually think something useful that Jordan Peterson spoke on the issue of depression was we should consider, relating back to what I just said about the tribe, evolution, and the harsh environments we're evolved to. Because look, depression's like this huge umbrella term for, it's not huge, it's a big umbrella term for multiple different sets and clusters of symptoms that we don't really understand, that are extremely common, and they're not easily moved. I mean, I just had a conversation with a family member last night. She related to me that her daughter had been given an experimental, not experimental, it wasn't experimental, it was a controversial antidepressant that she then found out subsequently had been banned in Sweden and in America. And inside of 6 weeks of giving it, of the psychiatrist giving it to her daughter, she'd attempted suicide 3 times. This is serious, and we need our serious heads on here. We can't just politicize everything. Be like, I don't like what you said because it made me feel me, and I was like, nah, but yeah, fine, you can fucking play that game if you want. But this is serious stuff, and we need to look and just be curious and go, why? I'm a hunter-gatherer. Why am I like, oh, I don't want to do anything. What do you want to do? I want to lie here. And then what happens? You don't sleep. And then what happens? Your hunger disappears. It's a little death. It's a little movement towards death. So, in terms of the tribe and dominance hierarchies, a good point that Jordan Peterson makes that we should all consider is, whether you like him or not, we exist within hierarchies. We exist with it. You can call them dominance hierarchies or status hierarchies, whatever you like. And when we feel, as the animal human that we are, that we're elevated in the dominance hierarchy, we feel better. Our biochemical reality, our neurotransmitters, our hormonal mixes shift, and we physically, somatically feel biologically better, which is really all there is. Like, you're hermetically sealed, your consciousness is hermetically sealed inside of this flesh suit. So it doesn't matter what's going on externally. If I'm giving you drugs that make you feel amazing, you're having a great time. That's like solipsism 101. That's just a basic, any GCSE level philosophy student can grasp that at 16 years old. If you feel like shit at a biological level, no matter what's going on, we would tend to call that a mental health issue. Like, if you're doing really well, but you still feel like shit, something is damaged, something is broken, and it's not assessing your level in the dominance hierarchy correctly. So now we'll get to the prescriptive bit. In terms of Jordan Peterson's idea of depression relating to the dominance hierarchy, I would say if you're starting to feel depressed, look at where you are in relation to your tribe. Are you contributing? Are you significant? Are you helping people? Are you connected to people? Are you of import? Are like people calling you and saying, please come and help us to the thing with the because you need all that. You really need all that. Do you have a purpose? Do you have a mission? You need all that. There's nobody who lives a purposeless life. There's people who haven't got a purpose, but they are purpose machines, and they're really sad and dysfunctional. So think, where am I on the dominance hierarchy? I'm feeling depressed these last few days. Do I feel like I'm sliding down in my status? What can I do about that so that I feel better? Contribution is huge. I mean, recently I'm going to release another video soon on rigid individualism and just how sick it's made us. It's probably made us just as, if it's as important as narcissism. You can take narcissism and rigid individualism and split them right down the middle. They are distinct and they're both doing huge damage to us. But if you have no concept of yourself as a cog in a system that is contributing, you're really fucked, because you're not an individual. You're not designed as an individual. Designed, that suggests God. You're not evolved as an individual. You're not evolved to be a consumer and an individual. It's sick. It's demented. And it's crazy making to try and live like that. It's a real mistake to try and live as an individual. In a choice between collectivism and individualism, I'm for individualism. But if you take absolute extreme individualism along a long enough logical line, you'll end up in an insane asylum. If you take it to its extreme logical conclusion, you will end up in an insane asylum. It's really dangerous. So when you're thinking about your own depression, consider where you are in the dominance hierarchy, consider your levels of contribution, consider your levels of significance. Don't just assume that because the feeling is biological, that the cause is biological. The cause is only biological to the extent that it's evolutionary. Let's use the word primal. It's primal. So the cause is primal. The effects are biological. I'm not one of these people who says you can put on a pair of shoes and go and jog off depression. If you can, that wasn't fucking depression. You were feeling blue. You probably could have done the same thing by sticking the Prodigy on and dancing around the living room in your pants. I've had depression. It's one of the things I've struggled with the most as a mental health issue over the years, and it's very hard and it's very physical. It's a physical thing. It's in your body. But the cause may be primal. The cause may be evolutionary. It might be, it's not biological. I don't see, if I say the cause is biological, it's like, oh, your brain engine isn't producing enough goo. Sometimes yes. There are conditions that are highly likely to make people not produce enough serotonin, and that is likely. But for most of us, it's not that. It's a status issue, and it's a culture issue. We live in a sick individual culture that's non-tribal, but we are tribal creatures. So you have to think about that. In terms of the prescriptive stuff in relation to what I said about the death drive and the option to just walk away from the tribe and quietly die so that it's healthy for the tribe, so it's adaptive for the tribe, so it's positive outcome for the others. What I would do is and the way I do this now is I'm like, this is an invitation from evolution. This is an invitation from the cold, hard lineage of genetics. It does not care about my happiness. It cares about my survivability and my repeatability at the genetic level. And it's a test. That's how I view it. I would say, are you going to go and walk away and sit under the tree and come back? Or are you going to walk away and sit under the tree and stay there? The only thing, I'm saying walk away under the tree like a wounded animal, as in the Sam Vaknin example. The only thing that's kept me coming back is mission. And it's almost like, I would say, a semi-religious, semi-spiritual sense of where my place in the world is, and of having some kind of a mission or having some kind of a purpose. And I really think that's critical. We have to find purpose. We have to find meaning, and we have to be very committed to get through the times that we're living through at the moment. The culture is very, very sick, and I believe it's in fever now, and it will probably die. This version of our culture is probably going to shake, fever some more, puke a bit, and then die. I think that's what's the most likely outcome is. So we need to be very, very strong and very, very patient and very, very determined. So we must have purpose in order to get through that. So that's it. Please do watch the Sam Vaknin video. It's really good. It's very, very thought-provoking. It's a very interesting reframe to an old issue. My point is not a counterpoint, it's an adjacent point, which is that health should be considered beyond the individual. Health and adaptivity could be for the tribe and not for you. If you lost an arm in a saber-toothed tiger's mouth, unless you're really good with the slingshot with your other arm, you might be done. You might be out. You might be off the team. So yes, okay. I hope that was useful, even if at points a little dark, and that you took it in the spirit in which it was intended. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you very much for your time and for your attention, and I look forward to speaking to you again very, very soon. Cheers.